L24 Midnight News Edition, coming to you live from Algiers, and to the headlines. On the day of his return, Algerian President supervised the signing ceremony of several partnership agreements between Algiers and Lisbon. The special representative of the Secretary General for Libya co-chaired with Turkey the first plenary session of the Security Working Group of the Berlin process. Threatening to shatter the seventh fragile ceasefire, clashes between rival military factions broke out on Wednesday in Sudan's capital for the second day consecutively. Kremlin spokesman: Russia will achieve all its goals in Ukraine, either through its special military operation or through all other means. Hello again and welcome. Algerian President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune returned on Wednesday to Algeria after ended a state visit to Portugal at the head of an important ministerial delegation. This important visit, which reflects the depth of strategic relationship between the two countries, was marked by the intense activity of President Tebboune, who met with representatives of the members of the national community in Portugal. The Algerian president was also granted an official reception by his Portuguese counterpart, Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa, in Lisbon. The President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, supervised on Wednesday the signing ceremony of several partnership agreements between Algeria and Portugal. The ceremony was chaired by Portuguese Prime Minister António Costa on the Portuguese side and included the signing of Memorandum of Understanding in the field of digital governance and administrative modernization, in addition to a cultural exchange program from 2023 to 2025.
وعن الجمهورية الجزائرية مذكرة تفاهم في مجال وليد.
And earlier, the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, had talks in Lisbon with Portuguese Prime Minister António Costa as part of his state visit to Portugal. The talks were held at the headquarters of the Portuguese Prime Ministry in the presence of the members of the delegations of both countries. In the same matter, the Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune received an exceptional reception at the headquarters of the Portuguese Parliament, entering under the applause of the deputies of one of the oldest European democracies. He was then received by the President of the Portuguese Parliament. Out of this visit to Portugal, Algerian President emphasized the positive results achieved by Algerian economy, especially in the exports outside hydrocarbon that have exceeded $7 billion over the last few years. More in this report.
The President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, expounded the positive results recorded by the Algerian economy, notably after the promulgation of the new investment law that provides incentives for foreign investment, noting that many Portuguese companies operate comfortably in Algeria.
Du partage du développement avec nos amis portugais, ils nous connaissent et nous les connaissons. Et je pense qu'il y a beaucoup d'entreprises actuelles portugaises installées en Algérie qui travaillent à l'aise, surtout maintenant avec la nouvelle loi sur l'investissement, qui est une loi qu'on pense assez libérale et assez protectrice de l'investissement pour que les gens viennent investir en Algérie. Donc j'encourage les amis portugais, les hommes d'affaires portugais et les hommes d'affaires algériens à s'entendre sur un avenir commun économique, tant plus que les relations politiques et les relations sociales sont très fortes avec le Portugal.
The head of state also recalled the place that the Algerian economy has on the African continent, given that Algeria is the only country which is extremely solvent and which has no debt.
Du partage du développement avec nos amis portugais. Ils nous connaissent et nous les connaissons. Et je pense qu'il y a beaucoup d'entreprises actuelles portugaises installées en Algérie qui travaillent à l'aise, surtout maintenant avec la nouvelle loi sur l'investissement, qui est une loi qu'on pense assez libérale et assez protectrice de l'investissement, pour que les gens viennent investir en Algérie. Donc j'encourage mes amis portugais, les hommes d'affaires portugais et les hommes d'affaires algériens à s'entendre sur un avenir commun économique, tant plus que les relations politiques et les relations sociales sont très fortes avec le Portugal.
One of Algeria's aspirations is geared towards green economy, through which it intends to penetrate the European market as part of future economic partnerships.
The same line of thought, Portuguese businessmen have expressed their interest in investing in Algeria, especially in the hydrogen and renewable energy sectors, in light of the common desire expressed by Algeria and Portuguese presidents to expand the multifaceted partnership. Murab Laour.
A fresh start for Algerian-Portuguese relations, as both parties are keen to conclude new partnerships and achieve economic cooperation. Portugal has stated that its businesses are ready to use all their knowledge in hydrogen and renewable energies for the benefit of Algeria, while Algeria revealed its ambitions to produce 15,000 megawatts of solar energy by 2035.
زيارة تأتي ربما في خضم زخم واضح عبر الاهتمام بالملفات الاقتصادية. نعتقد كشركات وطنية أن ثمة آفاق يمكن الاستفادة منها. نستطيع أن نستلهم ونستفيد من عديد التجارب التي يمكنها أن تقدم الإضافة الحقيقية أيضا لاقتصادنا الوطني.
Mining and the manufacturing of automobiles and spare parts are two other industries that both sides rely on to develop their extensive relationship.
These kind of meetings, they are very good because it's the opportunity to meet people from our area in Algeria and to discuss possible business between us, the Portuguese and the Algerian companies. So for that matter, it's very important and it's quite good, these kind of opportunities.
Algeria's economic wagers include efforts to tempt Portuguese companies with a guarantee of win-win results, as well as efforts to secure hydrogen networks in the southern part of the European continent. A common desire expressed by the Algerian and Portuguese presidents to expand the long-standing diversified partnership between the two countries.
President of the African Development Bank Group, Akiwanomi Adesina, expressed support for the Trans-Saharan gas pipeline project linking Nigeria to Europe via Algeria. In a statement to the Algerian news agency, the spokesman said that the pipeline is very important as it is an investment that has our support and the support of the African Union. Algeria's oil exports rose significantly in the first quarter of this year. From January to March, Algeria's average oil exports rose to 430,000 barrels per day, compared with 390,000 during the same period last year. Algeria, with its giant Sonatrach group, is seeking to raise its crude oil production to meet its internal needs on the one hand and to raise its crude oil exports on the other, especially after the announcement by Sonatrach Group of 6 oil and gas discoveries during the first quarter of 2023, marking the highest rates of new discoveries in the world. In Africa, still the Libyan Joint Military Committee 5+5, along with the Security Working Group from Berlin Conference, held a significant security meeting in Tripoli. The primary objective was to advance efforts toward inclusive national elections, which would provide a pathway for Libya to overcome its current crisis. Hussein Berkan.
In a historic gathering, the 5+5 Joint Military Committee and members of the International Security Working Group comprising the United Nations, African Union, France, Britain, Turkey, and Italy, came together in Tripoli to discuss the way forward. During the security meeting, the participants focused on implementing the ceasefire agreement signed in October 2020 and the unification of the Libyan military. These efforts are part of the ongoing initiatives led by the United Nations and its Special Envoy, Abdullah Batili.
And social turmoil.
For the first time, the Security Working Group met in Tripoli in the presence of the 5+5 Committee. Security is an essential element in the political process. It must lead to elections, stability and unity. The European Union is ready to provide means of support.
As a follow-up to recent discussions, the Tripoli meeting also addressed the establishment of a joint force encompassing the eastern, western and southern regions. This force will play a critical role in securing the southern part of the country and ensuring the smooth conduct of upcoming elections. With the current conditions in Libya, the nation appears poised for inclusive national elections that will pave the way for the resolution of its political crisis and moving towards a brighter future.
In Sudan, the sound of heavy artillery shelling and explosions was heard on Wednesday in Al Khartoum and the adjoining city of Darman. The renewed fighting shattered a 7-day truce agreed by the army and its rival, the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. Marimzian.
Heavy artillery shelling and explosion sounds were heard in Khartoum and Darman despite pooled international efforts to help stop the violence. The renewed fighting shattered a 7-day truce brokered by the US and Saudi Arabia and agreed to by the army and its rival, the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. A joint statement from Washington and Riyadh warned that the warring parties did not observe the short-term ceasefire. Besides, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken cautioned both parties of possible sanctions if the latest ceasefire was not adhered to.
If the ceasefire is violated, we'll know, and we will hold violators accountable through our sanctions and other tools at our disposal. We facilitated the ceasefire, but it's the responsibility of the Sudanese Armed Forces and the Rapid Support Forces to implement it.
For his part, UN Human Rights Chief described the situation as heartbreaking, calling for an end to violence.
It's heartbreaking what is happening in Sudan. In spite of successive ceasefires, and they keep making these arrangements, we see that they get observed in their breach almost within hours after these arrangements are signed. We see how civilians continue to be exposed to serious risk of death and injury.
And despite ceasefire, aid workers say that the delivery of humanitarian aid remains slow, with many staff arriving at Port Sudan on the Red Sea coast and waiting for the security permits. More than 300,000 people have now fled Sudan to already impoverished neighboring countries, including Chad and Egypt, with the total number of people in need of help reaching 25 million people. It's worth recalling that hundreds of innocent lives were taken due to the conflict that broke out more than a month ago and forced more than 1 million people to flee violence.
The Moroccan Action Group for Palestine strongly condemned and expressed its deep outrage towards the establishment of Moroccan Zionist Parliamentary Friendship Committee. These actions comes at a time when the blood of Palestinian martyrs is still fresh, and it is seen as an affront to the dignity of the nation. In a statement, the Moroccan group described the formation of Moroccan Zionist Friendship Committee by certain political parties in the House of Representatives as shameful and abhorrent. They emphasized that normalizing relations with racist and criminal entity will only lead to destruction and the harm of Morocco. In related matters, Zionist occupation forces have initiated a large-scale arrest campaign in various parts of the West Bank and in the occupied Al-Quds. As clashes erupted, the occupation forces arrested a Palestinian father and his injured son from Jenin. Additionally, they stormed the town of Jaba in the south, resulting in the arrest of the two brothers, Karama and Hakim al-Hudhud. No injuries have been reported at this time. In Europe now, the Russian TASS news agency said that Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said that Russia will achieve its goals in Ukraine either through a special military operation or by other available means. The news agency added that Russian President's press secretary said it would be too early to say which one of the proposed settlement roadmaps would be preferable for Russia. Russian President Vladimir Putin claimed Wednesday that Western countries are increasing instability globally. His comments were echoed by the country's top diplomat Sergei Lavrov, who said that the West follows Russia's strategic defeat. In a video addressed to the Security Conference in Moscow region, Putin blamed the West for a military build-up and interference in the internal affairs of the other countries that destabilize global security.
Мы видим, что современная международная обстановка характеризуется нарастанием. Такое положение дел прямо связано с...
This state of affairs is directly related to the desire of individual states and associations to preserve, maintain their dominance and impose their own rules, completely ignoring the sovereignty, national interests and traditionals of other states. All this is accompanied by a build-up of military potential and ceremonious interference in the internal affairs of other countries, as well as attempts to extract unilateral advantages from the energy and food crisis provoked by a number of Western states.
Russian president also warned of the repercussions of blackmailing his country with what he described as illegal sanctions, indicating that there is an alternative by bypassing what he called Western hegemony.
Russia is convinced that there is a real alternative to such a destructive course, a policy of blackmail and illegitimate sanctions. This is the strengthening of stability in the world, the consistent building of a system of unified and indivisible security, the solution of large-scale tasks to ensure economic, technological and social development.
NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said on Wednesday that Kiev will not be able to join the military alliance as long as the conflict in Ukraine rages on. Last September, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky announced a bid for a fast-track membership for his country into NATO. However, Western governments worry that this move could take the alliance closer to a conflict with Russia.
Everyone realized that to become a member in the midst of war is not on the agenda, and that's not the issue. The issue is more what happens when the war ends. But what we will do most likely is that we'll agree at least this program of making Ukraine even coming more closer to NATO and more interoperable with NATO.
With this Atlantic alliance, also Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson has said that Asia-Pacific regions does not welcome NATO's plan to open a liaison office in Japan after the announcement of the Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida to open it.
NATO is a regional organization. Therefore, if NATO breaks through regional restrictions and expands to other regions, what we want to say is that the Asia-Pacific does not welcome group confrontation, does not welcome military confrontation. Japan has a history of aggression, so it should be extra cautious on the issue of military security and do things that are conducive to maintaining regional peace and stability.
Mikhail Mishustin, Russia's prime minister, signed a set of bilateral agreements on a visit to Beijing. Russia and China have agreed to deepen investment in trade services, promote agricultural exports and boost sports cooperation. Nabil Khazini in this report.
He is the highest-ranking Russian official to visit Beijing since the start of the conflict in Ukraine. And with the arrival of the Russian Prime Minister to the Chinese capital, another chapter in the Sino-Russian relations has been written. Moscow and Beijing signed a series of agreements taking up relations between the two countries to an unprecedented level despite criticism from the West.
China-Russia pragmatic cooperation is characterized by resilience, great potential and extensive space. which has become even more prominent this year. China is willing to work with Russia to implement the consensus of the two heads of state and promote pragmatic cooperation in various fields to a new level.
This high level in relations is highlighted in statements, such as the one of the Chinese president, who said Beijing will support Moscow's core interests. China and Russia are taking center stage as both countries continue to deepen ties, just as a chasm with the West appears to be getting deeper. Only last week, G7 leaders so angered Beijing and Moscow when they pledged new measures targeting Russia and spoke in one voice on their growing concerns over China.
Today, relations between Russia and China are at unprecedented high level. They are characterized by mutual respect of each other's interests, the desire to jointly respond to challenges, which is associated with increased turbulence in international arena and the pattern of sensational pressure from the collective West.
China and Russia have long shared similar geopolitical and economic aims. China last year became Russia's largest customer in the energy sector, allowing Moscow, under Western sanctions, not to see its gas exports collapse.
Just said former U.S. President Donald Trump is set to stand in court on 24th of March 2024 for a criminal case which will coincide the Republican presidential primary season. The judge also advised Trump of restrictions on his ability to publicly discuss certain evidence handed over by prosecutors. Coinciding with the presence of the Sahrawi Republic football team in Algeria, the High Council for Youth and Sport in Algeria organized at the Arts Culture Center a reception in honor of the Sahrawi players and the delegation in the presence of the ambassador of the Sahrawi Arab Republic in Algeria. It's worth noting that the Sahrawi national team, which was created here in Algeria, had a friendly game last week against Mouloudia of Algiers club at Nelson Mandela Stadium. Now, moving on to another topic. On Tuesday, over 100 Brazilian protesters gathered outside the Spanish consulate in Sao Paulo to condemn the racist abuse of Real Madrid player Vinicius Jr. The protesters held banners and stickers that read, "Vinicius Jr., I am with you." I am started chanting, La Liga is racist and end racism in Spain. It's worth noting that Vinicius, who is the black Brazilian, has been subjected to repeated racist attacks since arriving in Spain 5 years ago. But in the last season, particularly last game, especially in Valencia last week, he was strongly attacked and described by fans as a monkey, in a case that flared up huge criticism in the whole country, inside and abroad.
Today, this act is in support of Vinicius Jr. and to show what happened there in Spain. Brazil is united, and we of the Black Movement are united against this attack.
We have to take our voice to the government of Spain, because we will not admit, we will not put up with racism.
To this end, ladies and gentlemen, thank you ever so much for being with us. For more updates, you can follow our social media platform. And all I can say at the end, take care of yourself and good night.